Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So guys, in this video we are going to understand about context API. So in our last video we have seen what is prop drilling and what is the problem that we were facing in prop drilling that can be solved using context API. So before starting the video, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and also if you found the video helpful, please give it a like. So let us start understanding context API, but before that let's have a basic revision of what we learned in the previous video and what was the problem that we were having in prop drilling. So in prop drilling, what we seen was we have multiple components. Okay, in this way, first one is our parent component or main component, and then we have a child of that parent component, which is child A. Then child B is the child component of child A. In the similar way, child C is the child component of child B. In this way, we are having a nested hierarchy of child components. Now in this scenario, when we have to pass any data which is present in parent component to child C component, we cannot pass directly because React is following one-way data binding, and if we have to pass data in between components, then parent can send its data to child A, then child A will send to child B, and then child B will send to child C. So in this way, the data will be sent from parent to child C. But we understood that since in this example, there are only two intermediate components, so it is quite easy and possible to do so. If our code is very complex and if we have 13 to 15 intermediate components, then it will be very tough. And practically, if you see, there is no point of sending the data to intermediate components because they themselves are not using it. So we have a better approach to solve this problem, which is context API. So let's understand what is context API in this video. So context API is a feature in React that provides a way to share data between components without having to pass props manually through each level of component tree. Okay, so when we use context API, we do not have to pass props manually through each level of component tree. So there are basically three steps that are present in context API that you always have to remember. If you have understanding of these three steps, you will never forget context API. First step is creating a context. Second step is providing the context, and third step is consuming the context. Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to go to our code editor and we are going to implement these three steps. So this is the same code which we have written in the previous video. Okay, for prop drilling, in this code what we are doing is we are passing name to child A. Okay, and then child A is sending the same name or data to child B here, and in the same way child B is sending to child C, and finally in child C we are displaying this data. But this time we don't want to do this, so first of all let me remove these props. In the similar way, I will also remove the props from here. I am also going to remove props from child C. Now we have removed props from all the places. Okay, because in the previous video we have written prop drilling logic, so we were passing it in multiple files. So now if you see, we have child A, child B, and my name is, because now we have removed prop drilling, so our name is not getting printed. So now we will make use of context API to do the same thing. So for first step is what we have to create a context. Okay, so in order to create a context, we need a method from React which is create context. So I'm going to import it. Now the next thing is we need to create a context. So let us now create a context, const data, and this is the name of my context, and I'm going to use this method create context. So my context is now created, so you can say step 1 is now done. Okay, let's move on to step number 2, which was providing a context. So how can we provide a context is, first of all, we need to wrap our component, that is the main component, inside the data.provider. So basically data is our context name, and then we have to write provider. So in this way we have to wrap our main component. So what this will do is basically this will provide our value to all the child components. Whatever we mention inside data provider, all of those components and their child components will get this data. So now the value that we have to pass, so we have to pass this value, right? So that we have to write over here, so value and name. So once this is done, next thing is we have to export this, okay, data. So I'm going to write export. So now we have exported data. So we can say our step number 2 is also completed. Let's move on to the final step, which is consuming the data that is provided. We want to consume the data in our child C component. So I'm going to my child C component, and first of all let us import our context. So import data. Then what we need to do is we have to write the data.consumer. Let me comment this line because as of now we don't need it. And inside data.consumer, what we do is we have to write a function, because this is the basic syntax you can understand. Here what we are going to do is I want to get my name value, right? So I'm going to write name here, and then whatever my return statement is. So my return statement was this one. So I'm going to take this one. and let's put it here. And in this way, what we are doing is we are returning our value, and here after my name is I want to display the name value. So I'm going to write it like this. So as you can see, I'm getting my name value over here. So this time how we are getting the data, we are not doing prop drilling, that is sending through each child component, but what we are doing is we are directly getting the data in our child C component. So this is only what is context API. So I hope now you have understood all the 3 steps of context API. First one was creating a context, which is this one. Then second one is providing a context. And then the third step is consuming the context. Okay. Now in this way, you might have felt that it is very easy, right? But let me tell you, there is a little bit of complexity that is attached to context API, and that complexity is resolved by our use context hook that we have. And we are going to understand use context hook in our next video. But first of all, let us understand what is the complexity that we have. In this example which I have explained you, I have just created one context. So there can be multiple context also. Okay. So let's understand if we have one more context. Data one is the name of the context I am giving, the second one. Okay. So let us provide the context. So I'm going to write data one, and let us have a value which we want to pass. So let's take a value as tag and write it as React.js. And I want to pass this value. So I'm going to write it value. So our step 2 is almost done. Let us also export our context. So our step 1 and step 2 are done. Let us now consume it. So consuming is only where it gets complicated, because when we have multiple contexts to consume, let us see how it behaves. First of all, we need to import our context. So data one, and then now what we will do is, let me remove this one to takes a function. And then in this one again, we have to pass, we have to write consumer. And again, inside that, the same thing we have to do. We have to write a function, and let me write return statements also, because we have written curly brackets. So return, and then here we will write our statement, whatever we want. My name is, now we want 2 datas. Okay, first one was our name, so we will get name from here, and in the second one it was tag. So let's write it like this. My name is, and here I'm going to write name, and we are learning, and here I'm going to write my tag. Let us save and see. So if you see, I'm getting the value my name is, name value which is Rahul, and the tag value which is React.js. So my name is Rahul and we are learning React.js. So in this way, we are getting 2 contexts. Okay, we are consuming 2 contexts, but you can already see the nesting level and how complicated it looks. Okay, so if you have understanding of context API, it is not that complicated. You can write it, but you know, we get an easier way of doing the same thing using the use context hook, because when we use context hook, it becomes very easy. We don't have to write this nested tree structure where we write the outer context first and then the inner context and then our data. Let us see the interview question for today. So what is the problem in context API that is solved by use context hook? So as we have already seen, the problem solved by the use context hook in the context API is the reduction of verbosity and boilerplate code when consuming context values within the functional components. It simplifies access to context values by allowing components to directly access the context value without nesting consumer components, leading to cleaner and more concise code. Basically, when we use context hook, we don't have to write nested code, and it also makes us to write less boiler code. And this is only what is the benefit of use context hook that we are going to see in the next video. So that's all for this video. If you found the video helpful, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and please give it a like. Share your valuable feedback in the comment section. Thanks for watching the video.